with Columbia, for example, the uh, government sent the institution a list of demands, and some of the demands, were positive. I think from the HXA perspective, I mean, they, were wanting them to review viewpoint diversity on campus. They wanted them to commit to institutional neutrality. Um, but there were other demands that I think directly impacted open inquiry and not for the better. So, for example, they wanted departments to be put into receivership, which, if we think back to earlier in the conversation, the federal government is not supposed to have any role in shaping the curriculum. So here they are, they're not going to do the curriculum shaping themselves, but they're saying, you better do what we want. And,
Let me
you
be
know,
sure I understand that exact point. That's a fantastic point about academic freedom and HXA's concerns. So let's imagine a course that you and I were discussing before coming on the show, a case where at a university, and I've heard many reports of this being the case on universities, including some of the universities that have been targeted for the freezes. Imagine a university where a course is being taught where the instructor announces on the first day, this is a course about the Palestinian cause. We're not going to have debates about Zionism and anti-Zionism in this course. We're going to talk about ways to free Palestine as a single state solution. And they teach the course that way. That's within the realm of academic freedom. Is that what you would say? Or are we now edging into anti-discrimination? If a Jewish student who's pro-Israel is a Zionist in that sense, it's part of their Jewish identity, let's say, wants to take that course, they need to just sit there and be quiet and not say anything about their views.
I mean,
How do you think about that kind of a case?
so I don't think there's any.
I'm sorry, this lies behind the freezes on some of on those departments being put into receivership. The claim that these departments are, in some sense, not engaged in the activity of searching for truth and knowledge, as HXA believes universities should be, all departments should be, but they're engaged in some kind of um, politicization or propagandizing or political action.
Activism.
Let's say activism without the reflective elements. How do you adjudicate all that?
Yeah.
How do you
So,
think through all
so
that?
I would think it through on a case by case, basis. For one, I think it's okay to have courses that are taught from a particular perspective, but that's different from not allowing students in the class to articulate dissenting, views and to actually grapple with them. There's never a license to make up facts or to omit, facts selectively to push your particular cause. I mean, I think that would be bad pedagogy. I think that could, properly result in discipline from an institution. But if there was a course that was on the Middle East from the Palestinian perspective, I think that that's okay. I think it'd be okay to have a course on the Middle East from the Israeli perspective. I think,
Provided the conditions that you met, which
yeah,
are quite thick,
right,
obtained,
right.
so that is people could take the class on the Middle East from an Israeli perspective, and they can walk in the class and freely feel free to raise intelligent questions about Palestinian self-determination.
Right.
And the readings would not be selected in a way that they were all propaganda, low-level pieces. They would be academically scholarly pieces, including hopefully viewpoints contrary to the main view of the
Right.
course.
I think that's right. But I also don't think it's the federal government's role
Okay, good.
to step on in and say, okay, you're getting it wrong. So even if you had a course that was engaged in the particular activism, because of the federal government's need to keep its hands off of curriculum, I don't know it's the federal government's place to weigh in on how an individual course is taught.
Excellent. This is exactly where I want to. This is where I wanted to bring this this is where I want this conversation to come. Right to this very point. So, I think it's the case. We have good reason to believe it's the case. There have been many courses and and also some departments at some of the universities that have been targeted, where teaching has been conducted in a way that falls dramatically short of the standards that you were just describing and that I affirm as well. There have been courses taught where some students were not free to express their views or contrary to a dominant view of the course. Courses where the readings were biased, where they were not high quality. They were courses that were defective from the perspective of HXA's values, maybe in some whole departments, arguably. But now the question is, what should be done about that? If the universities have been allowing that and they're not changing it, one reflexive solution is to say, well, someone should do something. And now we have an elected leader who's willing to do something. Shouldn't we be cheering that? Would you say that, or would you say, how do you analyze that? Where does academic freedom come in? Because we're now saying that if you allow the professors themselves to decide what they're going to teach, how they're going to teach it, some of them don't abide by the HXA way and the way they teach at all.
So I
They
think
reject those values.
so I think that when we're talking about the federal government, the hands off of the curriculum is kind of an absolute. When we're talking about other state governments getting involved, um, I get worried anytime the state government can go into a class and decide that they don't want certain ideas being taught. I don't think they're really great experts on the pedagogy. I do think that that's better left to the institutions to decide. But I do think that if they wanted, as say state legislators, to look at the mix of course offerings and the ideas, and they said, "Oh, geez, you have 24 sections on the Middle East from the Palestinian perspective courses. You don't even have a single one from the other perspective," and wanted to, insist and on the creation of additional curriculum options. That's additive and not subtractive. So
It,
I
crea- it,
I,
would
I
create,
wouldn't.
it would create a richer environment of inquiry.
Right. So I'm not one who thinks that there's no role for governments to ever play in looking at the mix, but I get very worried anytime any government actor has the ability to say, "Don't teach that."